Hello, hello. This is Fountain and you've come back to my channel. It's good to see you here. Today I want to talk about the serpent and some of the significances of the serpent. I did a video a while ago about the significance of pine cone and had a rather interesting number of views on that video. So I thought, well, this is obviously something that people are quite interested in at this point in time. So here I am doing another one, but this time obviously about the serpent, or the aka should I say, the snake. And I'm sure there's many different interpretations around the world. You'll find some rather interesting ones, depending on obviously religion, culture, geography. And I guess for my own sort of background, there's been quite a lot of, I guess you could say, Christian sort of philosophy around the snake, the serpent, and obviously there's a lot of inversion that can go on with those interpretations. And I'm sure some of you are aware of the story of Adam and Eve, and there's many different ways to obviously interpret that story and how the snake shows up and what does that snake actually represent. And obviously there's the pondering of the snake representing a life force energy that is often sort of sits at the base of the spine, and it can travel up, and sometimes that can be lost through many forms, ejaculation being one of them. And obviously Christianity has equated a lot of that with evil. And I guess another interesting story is, if you're aware of some of the Irish culture, especially the story of St. Patrick, who drove out the snakes of Ireland, and that is also a representation of pagans and paganism, because obviously with them gone or being sort of forced to hide away, then Christianity could kind of come over as the predominant form of religion and obviously infiltrate a lot of Irish culture. So, and yes, you'll find many of these sort of stories in Muslim and Jewish religious texts, and and often it's been associated, I guess, with what people might use the term as evil, and often it will perpetuate one's fear they might have around the animal itself, the snake. It's interesting, like if you're into archetypes, especially if you're into a bit of Carl Jung's teachings, or you don't know who he is, not really into archetypes, you don't have to, but how the snake can sometimes represent like the shadow, or maybe even the feminine, in the way that I guess people might associate that with being the uncontrolled, therefore they might then equate that as being evil or dark. So yeah, very interesting interpretations. But moving away from those sort of religious ideas, I'd love to touch on some more of the sort of original people's interpretations in the snake, and I guess those that, well, probably lived outside those sort of monotheistic sort of religious doctrines or philosophies. And obviously one of them is that the serpent can represent wisdom and growth, and that is often even just associated with a very simple, well, it's simple in the sense it's just very natural for the snake to lose its skin, to regrow a new skin and let go of the old. And as you can see, that can sometimes be associated with growth, with wisdom. There's that sort of wisdom that comes with being able to let go of what no longer serves you, right? Obviously another representation that the snake can have is about fertility, rebirth, regeneration. And again, the serpent being sort of associated with sexual energy, life force energy. And so you can see why that is sometimes a representation of, yes, fertility and rebirth and regrowth. And I mean the rebirth again being associated with the shedding of the skin and the regeneration, the same sort of act that the snake will often go through. Another one, healing. The snake can be associated with healing. The potential of that would be because of its representations of the shadow. You know, when you can see the shadow, when you can merge with it, when you can work with it, there's a lot of healing that can be done with that, right? It can also be associated with balance of, well, if you think about where they live, right, they often live very close to the ground. So there's that, I guess in some religions they would see it more as being associated with the underworld, and even those that are not religious associations can still be associated with the underworld, but you know, it still lives on above ground in a sense. So it is that sort of balance of the dark and the light, and the underground and the upper world. And then also another symbolism is protection. So the snake can be seen as a form of protection. When I say that, I think of there's like a deity in it's Hindu philosophy that often has like a snake with them, and it's often there as a form of protection. I mean that's a religious kind of symbolism, but it's also seen throughout some other ancient cultures as well. The snake being a form of the protection, because if there's nothing for the snake to fear, which I'm sure the snake does have its fears in reality, but it's able to defend itself and to fight when it's required in those sort of situations. And so also, I mean, I'm residing on the land of, you know, Amaroo, the beautiful place, Australia, as some of you may call it. And they have their own like, amazing story of the rainbow serpent. I don't feel like it's my place to tell this story in this blog right here, right now. But, you know, if you are in touch with any mob and elders, I'm sure they will be able to tell you more about the beautiful rainbow serpent. And it's also interesting how in some philosophies there's this certain places on the earth in which there is points that could be associated with different energy points of a serpent. And, you know, there's a certain place in which the serpent's head rests, and a certain place in which its tail rests. And it wraps itself around the earth in very particular nations and geographical locations. And, you know, different energy points, I guess some could say it's associated with what some might know as the chakra points. But they'll be called many different things in many different cultures and belief systems. And so yes, it can be interesting to observe the world and what it's going through in certain places at certain times, and certain parts of the shadow that's coming up for that particular nation or that location, and how that can be associated with that chakra point in which it generally sits there as. And I guess another good thing to ponder on is also noticing the interesting inversions of the serpent, but also just the signs in modern culture and how often they have been inverted when it comes to the symbolism of the serpent and the snake. And so yes, this is a very, what I would consider a brief video. I mean, it's about 9 minutes now. Lovely, lovely number 9. There's so much more that you could learn about these teachings, and I'm sure some or many of you could even share some of your own. So you're welcome to, if you want, leave that in the comment section down below. You'll also find me on various other social media platforms, and also my Oneness Being website. That's all in the description box down below. And I will see you back here on this channel soon.